She married him to bear his heir. I really wish we could reach an agreement, she said, sitting by the fountain. Scene change. Paris returns to the palace with a gift. He is talking to himself. It will be difficult if I have to do the same thing as yesterday. I think I'll have to take it slow today. Paris, bashfully. But even if the same thing happens as yesterday, I won't hate it, but Paris looks at the gift in silence and tension. Seline comes out of her room. Paris is shocked and thinks to himself, is she planning to escape? Paris goes after her. Seline stops and fixes her hair. Paris, watching Seline from afar, thinking to himself, maybe she wants to impress someone. Whose room is this? Paris, shocked when Seline stops in front of his room, thinking to himself, damn, isn't this my room? Paris moves quickly in tension. Paris looks at Celine's room in tension, changes his mind and walks out quickly, thinking to himself, anyway, she can't enter my room without my permission. Manages to reach his room. Enters quickly without Seline seeing him. Places the gift. Goes to open the door for Seline. Opens the door forcefully. Says to Seline, come in. Seline looks at Paris in tension. Says, okay. Enters and sits by the fireplace. Seline and Paris look at each other. Seline smiles faintly and gestures for Paris to sit next to her. Paris looks at Seline in tension and then sits next to her. Moves closer to Seline. Seline smiles. Thoughts, he's just a cute teddy bear in my eyes. Looks at Paris shyly and says to herself, he changed his mind, and his attitude too. He looks very cute with this expression. Takes an apple out of her bag and says to Paris, I bought this today because I wanted to eat it with you. It looked delicious. Seline and Paris look at the apple. Seline starts eating the apple while Paris watches her in surprise. Paris does the same while Seline watches him. Suddenly laughs. Paris looks at Seline in tension and shyness, thinking to himself, why is she smiling? Maybe my face looks strange when I eat an apple. Says to Paris, I'm sorry if I made you uncomfortable by laughing. It wasn't my intention, really. Shows Paris the reason for her laughter, which is the difference between her apple bite and his. Says to Paris, it's amazing that you can take so much in one bite. It must be because the size of our mouths is different. Paris feels embarrassed and tense, thinking to himself, but everything about you is small. Your mouth, your face, your height, even your hands. Says in shock and shyness. Maybe other places too. Suddenly gets up and Seline looks at him in surprise. Says to Seline, I prepared a gift for you. Seline claps her hands in excitement. Paris gives Seline the shoes. Seline says to Paris in joy, can I try it on now? Unable to try on the shoes because of her thick robe. Paris helps Seline put on the shoes, saying, I'll help you. Feels embarrassed as he holds Celine's foot, thinking to himself, she's really so small. Seline looks at Paris shyly, thinking to herself, he's really so big. Then he looked at her. And here Seline smiled at him and said, thank you, I really like them. And here Paris looked at the shoe while Seline was saying to herself, do they fit me well? And here Paris looked at her and said to himself, this, seriously, what? This woman? Why do I feel like I'm losing my mind as soon as she laughs? So shyly he pursed his lips and said to himself, I have to get a grip. Then he imagined her moving freely in her new shoes and said to himself, now that she has comfortable shoes, I'm sure she'll run away, but running away from the cold north without any way to contact you. Does that mean you hate me so much that you want to die? This person lives in his own drama. So he looked at her and said to himself, are you going to smile like this nicely in front of me and then run away? And here Seline said to him, let's finish eating together. And here Paris looked at her shyly and said to her, okay. Then he went back and sat down next to her. But this time, Seline leaned closer to him. And here Paris was shocked and looked at her nervously and then said to himself, what? What do you want to do with me? Why do you keep smiling at me? Why? While Seline was enjoying sitting next to him in silence, Paris was feeling tense and clenched his fists until they bled, saying to himself, "How on earth is the Duchess planning to spend the night here?" So he turned to her angrily and said, "Just go back to your room now." And when she did, he started saying to himself, "Paris, seriously, what are you doing?" Then he looked out the window and said to himself, "I was ready to deal with her if she ran away." And he closed the window and said to himself, "But if she really runs away, I don't think I'll be able to control my anger. Will she leave me behind?" And here he noticed that she had forgotten her coat. So he went and grabbed it, saying to himself, "I don't know what I want to do with that girl anymore." While Seline arrived at her room and threw her bag. In shock, she said to herself, the beast Duke, right? It is clear that Seline's impression is correct. Paris also perfectly matches the description in the novel. But why? Why is this happening? And here she was, shocked as she said to herself, 3 nights have already passed, but the events of the original novel have not yet started. It is true that things were good at first, and I thought that they were taking care of me, so they delayed imprisoning me. And but a day and 2 days went by, and as time passes, I feel anxious. Then in shock, she said, "This is not consideration. Isn't something wrong?" And she imagined herself in an erotic situation with Paris, as she said to herself. In the novel, Seline's character was not revealed in detail. Since it was a long novel, was Seline originally not shy like me, but loved like the main characters, to the point that he could only imprison her? Because of her charming personality, and here she fell to the ground and said, "If so, my fate is sealed." Then she started crying and said to herself, I can't be the original Seline." And she remembered as she sat next to him and said to herself, "But the atmosphere between us today was different." Then she said shyly, "We were very close to kissing," but she was shocked when he just told her to go back now. So she started crying in frustration and said, I really wanted to be good. Did he really not feel anything? Am I the only one who wants to hug or kiss or even hold hands?" Then she broke down and started crying and said to herself, "I don't understand anything anymore." Then she looked at her new shoes and said, "Although I'm happy with this gift, but I heard that in Korea, if you give your lover shoes, they will run away. Could this gift have the same meaning here? I don't think it suits me either. You don't ask me to leave alone, do you?" And the next day, the assistant rushed to Paris and said, "My lord, last night I found a man." Paris looked at him angrily and said, "So what?" The assistant nervously said, "He is from the town of Kimberley, which is located in the southwest." Paris was shocked when the assistant said, "It is said that he came here to look for his fiancée named Seline, who disappeared even though they were not able to have an official ceremony, but they promised each other to marry." Said to himself, "I wondered if spring would finally come to my lord." And this is what happened. He meant that he thought he would be happy, but the opposite happened. Paris then said to him, "The earth's crust is melting these days, isn't it?" Gart was shocked and understood that he was going to bury his lover. He said to himself, "As expected. Are you planning to bury him?" And here he said to him, "Yes, it has been a month since the beginning of spring." Paris sighed and said, "Okay. I expected that. If she is beautiful in my eyes, she will be beautiful in the eyes of others too. I discovered it late, but is your beauty a crime?" Then he put on his coat and said, "So where is he now?" Gart said to him that he was in nearby lands, and here Paris smiled and said, "Even to come all this way here, love must have blinded him. I must take a look at his face to see what kind of man he is." And here the scene changes to Seline's fiancé in the novel, who started asking a person and said, "Have you heard? Miss Seline? I heard she got married." And her fiancé said in shock, "What?" Then he asked him and said, "Oh, where did she go?" And here he said to him, "It is said that she married a man with a great fortune far away in the north. Well, frankly, she doesn't deserve to rot in the countryside here. She has a precious fate." And her fiancé said, "That's right, but still." And here he started to imagine her, saying to himself, wearing expensive clothes and looking at precious flowers. An elegant tea-drinking life suits her more than anyone else. Is that enough for you? Are you happy now? You married a man from a rich family, and I'm an idiot and I didn't know that. Then he said to this person, "Please tell me more details." But this person said to him, "I don't know much either." And here Celine's lover traveled to her, saying to himself, "I just want to see her once. I don't know her exact location, but her face is not the kind that you can forget once you see it. I'll find her soon for sure." But Paris's followers met him and said, "We want you to come with us." And here they said to beat him and imprison him. And when Paris came to him, he started saying, "What is this? What do you want?" And here Paris looked at him and then said to his followers, "Start." And Celine's lover said, "No, don't do that. Don't do it." And here they forced him to drink this, and he started saying to them, "Leave me alone." But he became numb after drinking this drug. And here he said to him, "The town of Kimberlin, in the southwestern part of the country. Were you and a woman named Seline lovers who loved each other?" And here he remembered her and said to himself, "I want to live for you and for the children we will have." And here he said to him honestly, "Seline and I love each other, and we have sworn to be together forever." Paris glared at him and then left. His assistant, Yart, watched him nervously and thought to himself, "Oh my God, I thought it was a spring breeze, but it turned out to be a cold north wind. Aphilanon, a potion that temporarily removes the user's consciousness and allows them to tell the truth. Unless one is mentally strong enough to overcome this drug, what they say will be true. There are no prisoners from the enemy army here to satisfy the killing spirit of the master. I am the only one who can watch him closely to prevent his unexpected outbursts." Then he said nervously to himself, "You can do it, Jart. Cheer up, Jart." Paris looked at him and smiled, saying, "Yart, release him." Then he turned away and said, "Prepare the escape route."